I met Audrey Peterman when I was the visitor center supervisor at Everglades National Park many years ago.
We were both guests on St. Helena's Island for a conference, and I've been in love with her ever since.
Everybody connects with her very quickly because she's so positive.
Helping educate people about the culture of people of color.
To tap into that love, that hope, and that fierceness that she brings to people that she loves and cares about, to ideas that she loves and cares about, and to places she loves and cares about.
To give us, make sure that we had a sense of pride.
She also has shown that one person can really make a difference.
And so having people like Audrey being out there sharing the stories that often don't get told is a way that we can make sure that we're supporting the national parks.
She really gives us an example of what it means to lean into the full potential of who you can be.
Audrey Peterman is a great role model as a human being for all of us.
Audrey, thank you for giving me the gift of your love and also for being such an extraordinary example.
Thank you for standing by me, for standing by the parks, for standing by people, for standing by our better selves, and never forgetting who we are.
Audrey Peterman, author and advocate, this year's Centennial Leadership Award recipient.
I take a mic too. Oh, Audrey, she's not mic'd up.
And Bob Stanton, the 15th Director of the National Park Service, this year's William Penn Mott Jr. Leadership Award recipient.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you. Yeah.
Please be seated.
Is this yours?
Yep.
This is mine.
Okay, gotcha.
Well, this might be quit while we're ahead time. We can all just go home. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being at the Salute to the Parks annual dinner for the National Parks Conservation Association. And I am awestruck because 22 years ago when I came to the National Parks Conservation Association as an intern who actually didn't know much about national parks or about advocacy for national parks, and I met Audrey, and I was in the office at NPCA on Massachusetts Avenue with the entire Enhancing Cultural Diversity staff out on vacation or training, and I got a call patched through to me from Bob Stanton. And I wound up talking to the director of the National Park Service who was asking me about what I thought the National Park Service should do. And I provided some sort of mealy-mouthed answer, and he said, well, Alan, I think that's a very reasonable approach. And look where I am now. So thank you. We've got a short opportunity to have a conversation with three incredible people, two that I know very well, and a gentleman here that I just met and have some pretty increasing admiration for, Jack Gladstone. We want to start in the middle. Audrey, we want to start with you. Yes. And so as we've started off big, we're not going to go small on this. But I just wanted to ask you to start off. You've been doing this for a while. What's your vision now going forward for national parks?
Thank you so much. But may I take a moment to say thank you so much to NPCA and everyone who's here, the entire board. And I got to cite my amazing and wonderful husband, Frank. You know, yeah. That the James Bond looking guy in the front row, okay? Because everything that we've accomplished, we've done together. And I'm so grateful to our family and friends that have traveled to be here with us. Thank you so much. It is beyond awesome to be on the stage with Director Stanton and Jack Gladstone. I'm like ecstatic. And I would say that my vision for the national parks for the next century and beyond is that it would be inclusive of the totality of the American population. I would want every American to feel as madly, passionately in love with the national parks and the land that is our dowry, our birthright, to understand the power of the stories thereon, how they tell us where we have been, who we are becoming, and help us to move into the future as a united country. And for that, I think we need a massive public information campaign, because I'm telling you, not every American knows that there's even such a thing as a national park. We need to change that urgently with a massive public information campaign. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Very good.
For all the NPCA comm staff in the House, you have your marching orders. Jack, I wanted to turn to you next, and we met maybe a week or so ago on a Zoom call. You told a story about a couple that had visited or was visiting Glacier National Park. They had put it on their bucket list. And that decision that they made to visit Glacier under the circumstances that they were facing impacted you. And I just wanted to know if you would share that story with this audience.
Yeah. With the slowdown of visitation, actually, not last summer, but the year before, our Blackfeet tribe did prohibit the flow all the way across, because our tribe was being hit, like many tribes were being hit very hard by COVID. And we valued our elders more than we valued any monetary gain from the summer. It was tough, it was a challenge, but last year a lot of people came, and I was driving for Ed DeRozier for Sun Tours, and I will be this summer also, to complement that. And there were couples, but there was one in particular who was kind of quiet, sitting in the back of the bus, and there was a medical bag that was on him, and his folks, his children said that he had always wanted to see Glacier Park, and he had only about 2 to 3 months to live at this point. He was very sick, had cancer. And I driving and meditated on this, and I said, what a privilege I have to introduce this man in the last months, maybe the last weeks of his life, to Glacier Park, to really the genesis of this planet and how Creator has unfolded it. And it was that experience that really made me understand that our role as interpreters is really a role, it's one that we accept as a solemn vow to connect, to build the bridge, not to build the walls anymore. Enough walls in this world. And that was real fulfilling to spend time on that day and just recognize the seriousness of our plight, our odyssey as human beings. We have this opportunity every time we turn around, if we open ourselves to the possibilities of empathy, of connection, and of kinship. That's it.
Great, Jack.
Mr. Stanton, it's been 22 years. I still have difficulty calling you Bob.
That's right.
Mr. Stanton, you've spent 35 years in the National Parks Service, and you have spent time since then leading the effort to make the parks more representative, just better for all Americans. What's inspired you about the Park Service? What's inspired you about the parks and that mission?
Thank you very much, Alan, but let me hasten to congratulate my fellow awardees, Audrey, who is my inspiration, and certainly Jack, and appreciate sharing your knowledge and your experiences with us, and certainly to you, Alan, but also to NPCA, who has been with us since 1919, 3 years younger than the National Park Service. And I want to thank the audience here, and certainly my wife. I don't know if she and Frank are sitting together or not. I need to check that out. I need to check that out. Frank is a good fraternity brother of mine, and I know about Omega Men. But anyway, that is a profound question, Alan, and it would take a long time to answer. But I will attempt to be brief. Certainly the values of the parks, the mission of the National Park Service, number one. Number two is the fact that the National Park Service programs are dynamic. The National Park system is dynamic. When I first entered as a seasonal ranger in Grand Teton National Park through the courageous leadership of then Secretary Stuart Lee Udall, there were 226, I believe, units of the park system. That has doubled, representing our commitment as a people in the nation to respect the diversity of our natural and cultural heritage. And within that recognition, to be honest with ourselves, that we have stumbled, we have made gross errors, but we are adult enough to reveal that in hopes that we can learn from it. So I'm pleased that everything is dynamic. But the National Park Service is a fantastic organization, and it's known in many quarters as administering the 26 areas now. But with the National Historic Preservation Act, it now administers the Register of Historic Places. It administers the Land and Water Conservation Fund, the Underground Railroad Network, to see them, the Civil Rights Network, on and on and on. So the Park Service is known widely, 40-plus National Heritage Area, Wild and River Scenic System, the National Trail System. Absolutely a fantastic organization, which represents, in essence, the faith of the American people that the Park Service can do the best job it can. But in closing, with all said and done, something that was impressed upon me as a seasonal ranger following my junior year in college, which gave me the greatest motivation, is to have the privilege and the opportunity to work with the finest men and women in the federal government, the men and women of the National Park Service. Yeah. That's what motivates me.
Thank you. Yes.
Park Service people!
I want to stay with you for just one moment. Tell us the story of how you became that seasonal ranger.
Thank you, Alan. Those of you who have read about the modern civil rights in the history books, I have lived it. One can just reflect on the 50s and the 60s as to what was taking place in our nation, is that the struggle for civil rights as guaranteed in the 14th and the 15th Amendments. And I don't want to get started on the Constitution. We'll be here for breakfast. But we had elected a young president and a vice president, and they in turn appointed a younger Secretary of the Department of Interior, the Honorable Stuart Lee Udall. And as with most people, they would see every evening that they come home on the black and white television, young college students sitting at bus counters in the restaurants trying to integrate. And there were 4 young people at North Carolina A&T, took their seats at a Woolworth counter that ignited action on the part of all historically black college universities throughout the South to demonstrate for their access to public accommodation. So apparently Secretary Udall, based on his own convictions, saw this. And he said, well, you know, I think that given the opportunity, those young people who are marching for the right to access these facilities, they could represent themselves well, they could represent their community well, and they could represent the colleges well. And indeed, I think they could represent me as a secretary and President Kennedy and Vice President Johnson well. And I'm going to give them that opportunity. And this was 2 years before the Civil Rights Act. And he directed a cadre of recruiters to go into historically black colleges and universities, said that we had never been on your campuses before, but this is a new day, and we're going to recruit among your student body those that you recommend, Mr. President or Madam President. So make a long story short, I have on my study a letter that was dated 2 days ago, days of 6, dated April 4th, 1962, signed by Secretary Stuart Lee Udall, confirming my appointment as a GS4 seasonal ranger. And so I owe a great deal to a native son of Massachusetts and my home Vice President Lyndon Baines Johnson, but certainly to a native son of Arizona, to appoint me my first job and my last job as a Senate-confirmed director. Also was appointed by a native son of Arizona, Bruce Babbitt.
Audrey, I wanted to ask you, maybe it was about 24, 25 years ago that you and Frank got in a car and started driving around the country?
That's right.
And you went to a number of places, a number of national parks, maybe not being overly familiar with the system. You were beginning a journey of learning. You didn't see a lot of our people there, black and brown people, and that impacted you to take action. Tell us about that journey and tell us about your decision to become an advocate for national parks.
Thank you so much for the question, Alan. So when Frank and I decided to drive around the country to see highlights like the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, Yosemite, I didn't know there was such a thing as a national park system, nor did I know that those are national parks. They were just destinations that were world-class, and so we wanted to see them, and we had a right to do so. But when I got to Acadia National Park, and we stood on top of Cadillac Mountain, and I saw the vast expanse of untouched beauty, I had a supernatural experience, literally. I fell madly in love with all of, well, first of all, with myself. I felt like, yeah, truly, I felt like just as all of that was beautiful and it was created by some force, the same force created me, so I must be beautiful and perfect too. And so I have lived in that reality, in that consciousness for 20-something years. The beauty about that is that I see everything and everyone else as beautiful and perfect too. That's where I start. And that's why I'm so eager for everyone to have the experience of that liberation and freedom that comes from being in a national park that is a major national park that's, held for its beauty and the ecosystem and the wonder. And I have to tell you that Director Stanton's story about Stuart Udall is an example of how movements are built. Because Director Stanton, in his position, was instrumental and dedicated to providing the funding, right, to the programs that Ayantha Gant Wright, may she rest in complete bliss for eternity. Her husband, Kenny, is in here this evening. I just want to recognize him.
Excellent.
And he provided the funding to support the programs that Ayantha and NPCA were leading that also brought, Alan to the table, and then has successively brought legions of other people into the fore, including Dr. Carolyn Finney, the definitive writer on African Americans in national parks now, in the house right there. And it just continues to build and expand into hundreds and thousands of leaders around the country. And that's how you build a movement from the ground up. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Very good, Audrey.
Jack, I wanted to turn to you next, if we could. Question kind of from out of my own left field. I'm interested in your thoughts on the spiritual connection between people and the land and how that connection can flow to people through places like national parks and Lake Glacier. What are your thoughts on that?
I've been an interpreter in Glacier Park for close to 40 years there. And Glacier Park, that area along this mountain front, wasn't known by our people as Glacier Park or the Rocky Mountains or anything. It was called Mistakix. Mistakix means the backbone of the world. And the backbone of the world is where the source of all things came. And the source of all things comes in the form of sunlight and, in probably more importantly, water and sunlight working together as agents of creation and folding down. There's a point in Glacier National Park called Triple Divide Mountain. It was it was 1992. There's a TED Talk on it, Triple Divide. Heritage and Legacy is what I did this TED Talk on. And the thing that made that a real special day for me and how I relay it to my audience and my passengers in the bus and people that I share is that my father and I, my dad, who was the great-grandson, I'm the great-great-grandson of a Hudson's Bay Company man, but my dad is the grandson of a Chief Red Crow, Mikistau. And it was Triple Divide. On the top of that mountain, we got a pretty nice picture of us on the top of that mountain. But I realized from that single point, there are 3 drainage watersheds. There is the Pacific, of course, heading out through the Columbia River drainage. There is the Missouri-Mississippi River drainage. And then to the northeast, there travels the Hudson's Bay drainage. And the Hudson's Bay is connected with both the North Atlantic and the Arctic Ocean. So here we have the axis mundi of North America right there. And at that particular power point, later on, I would emphasize that was politically, hydrologically, a center of things happening in terms of world history, in terms of what we face now, in terms of the climate challenge that we have, we're butting ourselves up to on this planet. So many of these things come into stark realization with the visit to the national parks. Today I pull off at Jackson Glacier, and there are very, very well-crafted interpretive exhibits that show you in black and white photography of what has happened within the past 150 odd years of our country with the glaciers. So there is opportunity, and you look at, as a human being, as a competitor, as a human being, you look at your challenges, your adversaries, honestly and head on, and respect those adversaries. But you know what is really insightful, that the adversaries we really changed, we really have today, are at the adversaries within ourselves and the reflection of ourselves, because we are, there is in Blackfeet culture, there is a, what we call a trickster. Now tricksters are elementary form archetypes, in terms of psychology, but a trickster is sunlight and shadow combined in one. One does not become enlightened by imagining forms of light, rather by embracing the darkness. And it is Carl Jung that led me to that. So in any ways, in facing the trickster and in facing the challenge of our own being, national parks supply us with a lot of material and a lot of bells going off inside.
Just a note to the audience, we are not taking phone calls for this program. So.
But I'll have you know, that was right on cue.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll do one last round of questioning as we wrap up this amazing panel. And Mr. Stanton, Bob, we have a audience full of advocates and people tuning in from all over the country. What's your message for advocates related to national parks? How do we move forward? How do we make sure that our parks are protected as they move into their second century? How do we make sure that they're protected for 7 generations from now?
Thanks, Alan. I will respond directly to that question, but before that, let me just preface another motivating influence. That is the generosity of the American people. I think about the number of park areas that have been donated, and here in the nation's capital and environment. I think about Wolf Trap Farm for the Performing Arts, donated. I think about the home of Frederick Douglass, situated on a 9-acre tract, donated by the National Association of Colored Women's Club and the Frederick Douglass Memorial and Historical Association, donated free of charge to the American people. And with us in the audience is Mr. Harry Johnson, the founding director of the Memorial Foundation that built and gifted to the American people the Martin Luther King Memorial on the National Mall. And there are over 300,000 individual volunteers that join with the men of the National Park Service daily in providing services. So thank you for your generosity, but more is coming, I hope, from you. With respect to what we can do as advocacy, I must offer a little bit of commentary here because it's something I feel very, very strongly about. Is that the director of the National Park Service is given tremendous authority by the Organic Act of 1916. But there's 2 things that the director of the National Park Service cannot do. The director of the National Park Service cannot establish a unit of the National Park System. And once the unit is established, that director, he or she, cannot divest the obligation of managing that area. So what that tells me that once an area comes into the park system and we hang that arrowhead out, what that is saying to the men and women of the Park Service, the volunteers, the advocates, and all who visit, is that that area is going to be managed, is going to be preserved, and interpreted at the highest level. Understand what I'm saying? That if the arrowhead is on it, it has to be promoted, sustained at the highest level. Whether it's in Gateway, New York, or Rock Creek Park, Sand Creek Massacre, Douglas Home, any area where the arrowhead. So I think as advocates, we do ourselves, we do the nation, we do the men and women of the Park Service a disservice when we talk about iconic parks, when we talk about crown jewels. If the arrowhead is on that park, it is iconic. It is a crown jewel. Yes. And Congress has not given the Park Service any prerogative to say this is a Class A or Class B park.
Wow.
When the arrowhead is on it, all of them mean a lot to the American people. That's my commentary.
Thank
and
you.
I stand by it.
Mr. Stanton.
Thank you.
Mr. Stanton.
Thank you.
We're going to have to call it, and we're glad to give you the last word on this. Audrey, we will pick this up in the coat room on the outside. Then we will give you the last word. It will be a 30-second quick word.
All right. Yeah. So I look forward to the day when we don't have to protect the national parks anymore because they will be cherished by the entirety of the American people.
There you go.
That's our last word. And let's welcome back Teresa Pierno to the stage.
Well, knowing our amazing honorees, I knew we would be inspired by their words. But, oh my gosh, this rich conversation was incredible. Thank you all. Thank you so much. It's just amazing. And thank you, Alan, for doing a terrific job.
Thank you, Alan.
I hope you were inspired by tonight's event. Each of us can make a difference for our national parks. Whether you write your member of Congress or invite a friend to experience the parks with you, You never know which action will be the one that makes a powerful difference for them and for our parks. To everyone who used our photo booth, here's what you created together. The image of Glacier National Park shows all of you across the country and at our in-person event in DC, coming together to support our parks tonight and throughout the year. You'll receive an email with this beautiful mosaic as a thank you for joining us. And now I'd like to share a video with you that shows just how much you mean to NPCA and to our parks.
For 100 years, the National Parks Conservation Association has protected what makes America special.
The mountains and the monuments.
Trees and animals. The people and their stories.
And you were always there with us.
To make things better. To stand up for what's right. To share the places you love.
It's because of you that kids like me know that these are our parks too.
Because of you, I can sit under giant sequoia trees.
Because of you, I can swim in Biscayne.
Because of you, I can see elk in Yellowstone.
Because of you, I can experience the history I learned about in school.
Because of you, I know my freedom wasn't free.
Because of you,
I know I'm part of something bigger.
Because of you, I want to do my part. And because of me,
es por mí, you and我, dahil sa akin.
Because of us.
My kids will know and love the parks.
Just like you do.
We're so grateful to each and every one of you who are making a difference. And tonight, we have another opportunity for you to give back. This year, a generous donor has offered to match every dollar we raise tonight. Help us make the most of this opportunity by donating to our park protection work. Last year, we raised $50,000 together. Let's see if we can top it this year. You can give by clicking the donate button on the left of your screen. And don't forget to put in your final bids. The silent auction will close tonight at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you for joining us this evening. This celebration just wouldn't have been the same without you. And now I want to leave you with a very special performance by tonight's honoree, Jack Gladstone. As you heard, Jack is a member of the Blackfeet Nation, a storyteller and a performer. He will perform his original song called The Bear Who Stole the Chinook. This song is Jack's own take on folk tales about the bear, a symbolic holder of the warmth of the world. As you'll hear, he beautifully weaves these stories together. Listen to the lyrics and watch as Jack's daughter, Mariah, signs alongside him. I couldn't think of a better way to end an already special evening. Again, thank you for being with us now and throughout the year. Good night.
Well, the snow came early and lay on deep. The cold blown bitter made the women weep. Our men tracked hard but could find no game. In our children's bellies were crying pains. Our elders gathered in the even dawn. They prayed and waited and looked, but little did they know that way up high the bear had stole the Chinook. Again, the bear had stole the Chinook. Well, the ragged orphan boy living alone called to the animals in his home. Owl and magpie flew on in. With coyote and weasel, there was 4 of them. As her council met, the magpie caught as her hero shivered and shook. He said, my relatives told me so. He said the bear has stole the Chinook. He said the bear has stole the Chinook. Our heroes journey to release the wind turned west to the mountain bear's den. For days they teamed and traveled along, together they did ascend up to the den that held the Chinook. The grizzly snored and snarled in his sleep. Owl crept close into his lodge, peeped. Bear punched Owl's eyes with a stick. So they sent in their brother who was lightning quick. The weasel slithered easy through the hole and found the elk skin back of the crook. The bear in rage roared, "Go away!" And the bear said, "I'm the bear who stole the Chinook." Then our friends made medicine smoke appear and blew it in the grizzly bear's den. The big old grizz fell fast asleep as Coyote crept on in. He found the bag where the wind was kept and pulled it to the light of day. There a prairie chicken picked the stitches out. Then the Chinook blew on its way. The Chinook blew on its way. Bear burst suddenly from his sleep. Bear said, our friends all fled, their job complete. The bear in vain pursued the wind. Oh, but the warm wind never was again his friend. Now the bear sleeps underground the winter long. In his lodge he grumbles and looks back to the days of the winter warmth. Back to the bear who stole the Chinook. To the bear who stole the Chinook. I'm the bear who stole the Chinook. I'm the bear who stole the Chinook.